Very, very happy with those results. I think the owner will be as well because the grease is ancient. Sometimes you can help them a little bit with just like a long screwdriver or pry bar on top of them. There you go. If they were to stick a tiny bit. Look at that. I mean, I have never ever had rear calipers move that easily. Look at that. All right, so we'll put this in ultrasonic cleaner and you'll see the next part how this all turns out. Welcome back to Living with a Classic and part 3 of getting this XJ Coupe back on the road after sitting for about 7 years and ready for a long road trip. In the previous parts we got a lot done. However, we still have a lot left to do. Got a couple weeks left to get everything up and running, get this thing inspected, cold AC, you know, you name it, just get this thing ready for that road trip. But if you haven't seen the other parts, I'll link them down below so you can check them out if you haven't seen them already. But part 2, we left off with stripping one of the carbs and I was going to put them in ultrasonic cleaner. I've done that. I'll show you how they turned out and then I think I want to clean them a little bit more as well. However, I got the wrong rebuild kit. So the right one was ordered this morning, at least I hope it's the right one. Should be here in 2 or 3 days. I've done a couple things off camera as well, so let me show you that and we'll have a look at the carb after it's been cleaned. I've been busy finishing off a few things and also starting a couple other things. One thing I finished off was the front end is completely done now besides bleeding the brakes. So new hoses are in place, new pads, everything like that. I've greased the front end, put these caps back on, so that is all set to go. Up here I have started to do coolant hoses, which was a little bit of a pain. So thermostat housing goes here, and that long bolt, that infamous long bolt, is usually super tight. I've had stories of them snapping. Luckily it hasn't snapped for me before, but this one snapped. So yeah, hacksaw and all of that, it's out now, and well, thankfully I have a couple spare intakes, so I can just grab some hardware from those and we'll get this thing back together. I have also started de-smogging this thing. So I removed the smog pump. We still have this over here, so I do want to remove this as well, but if I don't have the time, we can run it like this with that valve, or we'll put a plug in here. But my other plan is to unscrew them here and then thread something into the head to completely remove this. I've noticed that someone has already started to remove the EGR system because it's actually not connected on that side. And that goes up here. So I have hit everything with penetrating fluid so I can get this apart. My plan is to probably get this off as well and then possibly blank them up here or blank it right here and sort of keep this as a balance pipe between the carbs. Not really sure about that, but that's what's going on. Other than that, I think that would be most of the smog stuff removed. I'm just going to make the vacuum system a lot simpler and hopefully this thing should run even better than before. Other than that, still got to do coolant hoses here in the back. Do have a new heater valve, that's not correct one, and a couple more things to do over here in the engine bay. But let me show you the carb. So here is the one I've cleaned up, and if we compare it to on the ground with the other side, which has not been cleaned, we can see it is a big difference. So what I've done is the parts that were really dirty, I soaked in my parts washer first, just get rid of anything. Then I had them in ultrasonic cleaner, and afterwards I blew them out with compressed air, sprayed them down with WD-40 because that gets rid of any water. It's water displacement formula, and pretty happy with it. The rebuild kit I have on order has a new needle and seats, so we're going to take that out. And it has, what I was really missing is the gasket over here for the whole choke mechanism. I've taken the choke mechanism apart. This is the bimetal. It gets hot from this side, from here. So this is where the hot water circulates. Moves that bimetal, and that moves this thing. As you can see, there is a plunger there. That was stuck, and that's moving freely now. And then here is, here I mean, you have the idle. So if it's like this, you see, that will be pushed out even more. And then it can go in, and I think that is fully warmed up, and this is fully pushed in. So that seems to be working well now. I'm gonna probably put a little bit of lubricant in here so it moves nicely. Same goes in here. Put this back together with new seals. But this is an issue. It has a hole in it. Let's see if I can get that in focus. So that happened after the ultrasonic cleaner, because there's just a bunch of scale and stuff on here. So I've checked the other one. It is not as bad. It only has the corrosion up here, but not down there. I'm guessing it's the similar metals, because it's a side that goes, there's a short piece of hose that goes to a metal tube, and I think that's it. So my plan for this is, well, I'm still trying to figure it out, but I think I've measured, and it's 9 millimeters on the inside. I think I can get a 9 millimeter pipe, knock it in there, and sort of set that with epoxy in here, and then that will help seal. It can run in here pretty far, because there's nothing really in here. And then the outside, I can remove all of this as much as I can, and then I think JB Weld will be my friend. Hopefully with the hose over here and everything, that will be tight. It wasn't leaking or anything before, because the hose was just covering this up, but there was a loose thing here that just, I could push that with my fingers, but that's as big as I can get the hole. Everything else around there is solid. But otherwise, still need to clean out the piston. I'm just going to use brake clean to clean that off. And this thing, I think I want to try and just get a little bit of shine on. So I'm going to set you guys up in a tripod. I'm just going to get a little bit of polishing compound and just see what can be done with a rag and a bit of polishing compound. Nothing special. I'm just grabbing some Altisol. Not the best stuff for this, but if I like the way it turns out, I'll probably use a buffering wheel and the correct stuff. But I just want to see if these can polish up sort of like SUs can, or what's going on. Also, we are not restoring this engine bay, the rest of the looks of it. I mean, we're just going to clean it up. We're not going to paint anything. So I don't want them too shiny, but I do want them to at least look like we've done something to them. And I'm going to share a trick of how to keep these shiny once they are shiny. I mean, you do have to probably polish them every couple of years, depending on the use of the car and how it sits. But to clean it off, WD-40 on a rag. It brings back the shine, it removes any moisture, and it just protects it. That is my little trick for aluminum, bare aluminum, just basically detailing an engine bay with WD-40. It works really, really well. Alright, let's just see what happens. And like I said, this is not the full attempt. Look at that. I mean, just make sure, you guys are in focus. If you compare it to that side to that makes a huge difference. And I think this is what we're going to go for. I'm not going to use the buffing wheel or anything. We'll just polish up by hand. It will make it look a little bit nicer, but not, don't want to stick out too much, because I'm not going to do too much to the carburetor body. I kind of like the way it turned out. Just have the top a little bit shinier. But we'll still have to wait on parts. So let's move on to something else. Right after I turned off the camera, I actually got a text that the parts are in customs. So I should get them maybe today or tomorrow. So that's really good, but we can crack on with other things. This over here is exhaust gas recirculation. It's connected over there, or was, and basically this valve here, EGR valve, sends exhaust gases back to be burnt again. It's an emissions thing, and it's been disabled years ago over there, so I just want to remove the rest of it, clean up the look, and get rid of vacuum leaks, because someone's already done something there and a few other things. So one idea would be to put a plug there, but I'm going to see what it looks like with this removed. Maybe I can make some plates to sort of just make it look better down there, but let's start by getting these off. It's a bit fiddly with the AC stuff here. And let's get these off. That one was pretty much all the way loose. That one's tight. That one's loose. So this would definitely be vacuum leaks. So this is the second source of potential vacuum leaks we found. So all of this will just help this thing run better and be easier to tune. Okay, let's see. That goes off like that, and now it's just a compression fitting there. And got little gaskets down there. And you can see how sooty it is in there. So, guessing just old exhaust gases. So we can definitely remove that. There's been some sort of bodgery before. Someone is more familiar with the North American version of this car could probably tell what this has been. But yeah, removing that to the side, and then I think it's just a couple of nuts there. I can get this off and that pipe back, and then let's have a closer look at all of this. Got almost all of that off. The pipe is still sort of stuck over there, but when I do the coolant hoses, I'll be able to get that out. But it looks a lot nicer and cleaner. Put these nuts back on, and all I'll do is I gotta find some material, a piece of stainless or something, and I'll make two plates that look just like the holes here, or just like those gaskets. Put those in place, get a little bit smaller bolts for that, and that should work really well. I do also want to remove this, the air injection rail, but I'll do that as sort of one of the last things, because it will run with it in there. And we plug this hose, because I don't know if I can get a hold of the hardware that I need for this, because I live in metric land, but we will have a look at that. Next thing is coolant hoses, and this thing, which is the water heater valve, sits down there, because someone has replaced it with an aftermarket one, which, I mean, it's working, but it's not held in place, and it's plastic. So I'll put the original back on, but you don't need to see changing coolant hoses. We've done that tons of times. It's very simple. Remove the old hose, clean up the connection, put the new hose back on. So I will do some coolant hoses. I'll also do probably some of the hoses up front. We may do some of the belts. And I think by the time I'm done with that, we should have the parts for the carbs. The parts from S&G Barrett have arrived, and I think I got the right stuff this time. I found this kit on their site. It's a rebuild kit for these, but there was a really good exploded view of everything in it, because there's so many different rebuild kits, because there's so many different variants of this carb, and they're all called the same. But in that exploded view, I saw a lot of gaskets that looked like the ones I needed, like the ones around here and the ones around here. So that was great. However, I saw one thing that I don't think was in the kit, so I ordered those as well. And that's this little diaphragm here and these two gaskets. They go in here for the throttle bypass valve. Not sure if it needs to be there or not with all the emission stuff I've removed, but it was split on the one I took apart. So definitely an air leak in there. So replacing that. But otherwise, I think everything should be here. Every O-ring, everything. There's a diaphragm. I ordered spare ones, so I have an extra set of those. and there is the needle and seat, which I didn't have in the other kit. So I think I have the right kit this time, and I know I do because I've rebuilt one just because I haven't done one of these before, and I want to rebuild one off camera so I can show you how it's involved. And it's actually pretty simple, it's just a lot of gaskets, but not very difficult at all. So this is what it looks like, and I'm really happy. Nah, I'm just kidding. That's the before. Just look at all the dirt caked on it. That's the one I haven't done anything with, and here's the one I rebuilt. Really, really happy with how it turned out. I haven't gone over the top in polishing, at least in my opinion. Like, you know, the SUs on my daily driver are polished to a mirror, and that's maybe a little excessive. But this was just 5 minutes with some outsole to make that look like that. The top, the rest of it is just from my parts cleaner and then the ultrasonic cleaner and some WD-40, and that's how it turned out. So I haven't polished the body or anything, just the top a little bit. And yeah, talked to the owner about this, asked if he wanted it, and I said I just do it as a fun thing, and he said yeah, why not, because I don't want it to look out of place in the engine bay. But I'm still going to just clean up the engine bay a little bit because it's a little grimy, but we're not going to paint anything. So I think this won't look too out of place, but it will still look like, hey, this person cares about their carbs and they're rebuilt. At least that is the plan. The eagle eye viewer might realize that there's something missing. And yeah, I haven't put the whole choke mechanism back together yet because there's a hole in that. We're going to fix that. But before that, I think I have sort of realized how this choke mechanism works now. And this is just from fiddling with it, which I think is the best way to learn. But let me see if I can show it one-handed. So this is the choke on, and there's an enrichment circuit in here. And then you see the throttle blade is cracked a little bit, so that is your raced idle. That can be adjusted here. That's your fast idle, and that is your regular idle over there. So we're going to set all this up in a separate video. So then your car warms up, and this thing moves to here. And then as you use the throttle, you saw that jumps over there, and now you're back to regular idle. So then you put your car in the garage, you shut it off, and this slowly, wants to come back. But you see, it really can't. So then the next time, at least this is how I think you're supposed to start. I don't have a manual, so I'm going to look for one, for owner's manual for one of these cars, the US ones. But I think the next time you're in there, this thing is spring loaded, all ready to go. But you see the choke isn't on. So you push the throttle down once, at least that's what I think. And then this is spring loaded. That will go back like that. Put it back. This will be cracked. And it all works again. At least in theory. At least that's how I think it's supposed to work. And I'm going to put some lubricant in here just so it moves nicely. But we have a problem with the pipe with a hole in it. Here it is. This side is worse. This side is not as bad. This carb, you see, it's just in the end. It has some stuff missing, but it doesn't have any holes up top. But this one does. Can't get a hold of these really, and at least I haven't found this part being made. So trying to figure out what to do. This is material that can't be welded or anything, but this is my plan. I have this little piece of pipe I've cut. It's copper tubing, and it fits just right snugly in there. My plan is to basically slobber that thing in JB Weld. We'll push that in, let that cure, and then we'll put some JB Weld on the outside and sand that to a smooth finish so that the hose is something to grab onto. I've already prepared this. I have run a drill through it to clean out the inside, and I have just wire wheeled the outside, and it's as clean as it's going to get. So let's mix up some JB Weld and see if we can get this looking, somewhat usable. Okay, so everything's been cleaned off with brake clean as well, just to make sure that it's as clean as possible. This is just a Scotch pad, and I thought I'd just rough up the surface of this copper pipe. Anything I can do to help the JB Weld stick. There we go. I mean, this is definitely not the ideal solution, but you know, when it comes to sort of bodges, I think this is a pretty good one. I think the key to this will be just to let it really cure. So that's why we're doing it right now. Okay, I just want a really or a uniform thick layer on here, and we're just going to slide that on through. And whatever is left over, we will use to put in that little hole. I'm going to let that cure now overnight, and we'll have a look at it tomorrow. But before I go inside, even though it's late, I am going to take most of this carb apart, and we can let it soak overnight in the parts washer. And then tomorrow, brush it off, run it through ultrasonic cleaner, and then we'll do a rebuild together on this one. Took the whole carb apart last night, left some parts soaking in my parts cleaner. Ran everything through the ultrasonic cleaner now, and it's come up pretty well. Polished this part off as well. This is from the other carb, which we JB welded last night, and it's drying. It's pretty much dry now, but I just want to let it cure for a couple days before we sand it down. But really happy with that result, and I'll have to repeat it because this thing, once it was through the ultrasonic cleaner, yeah, it has a hole as well. So we'll repeat that process one more time. This carb was a lot dirtier than the other one. For some reason, it was really just caked on in oil. So I haven't gotten it looking as nice because it's just sort of stained metal a bit. The other one has been rebuilt at some point. Not sure if this one has gaskets and everything. We just stuck on a lot harder on this one. Or maybe this one sits closer to the EGR and gets more heat. I'm not really sure. But in order to start, we need to start with the float and setting the float height. That was just a little piece of debris in there. We have a new needle and seat over here, but we have several of these washers. And that is sort of one thing with these carbs, that setting the height of the float, you do a little bit with the washers. So I'm going to pick, I had this thickness of washer and the other one, so we're just going to pick that and hope that that's correct. So that the higher up this gets, and then you get the correct reading for the washer. Let me see, that was 14 millimeter. There we go. And here is the float. And I'm trying to figure out, this is the way it's set. It clips into place. And now, I think I've done it right. You see the casting line there? That line needs to be parallel with that, and the distance from there to there needs to be about 17 millimeters. So on the other one, when it was parallel, it was 17. That is 17. And that is 17. So I picked the right washer. If it wasn't the right washer, I could pick one of the other ones. That's the thinner one and the thicker one and a really thin one. And I could also bend the tabs over here. But I'm happy with that. And that is set up correctly now. Now we're going to look through our gaskets. This is the seal for the float chamber, and that is the float chamber. So I'm going to put a little bit of Hylamar on there. This is just a personal preference. These are old carbs, and I just don't want any leaks. And I'm also not too happy with these just plain paper gaskets. I think we could have probably had something nicer, but this is the kit. And I'm just going to do a light coat all over this thing. And like always, you need to let this evaporate, so we'll set that to the side. And while we wait for that, there's a hole in the bottom of there, which is this little plug. So I've done some research, and on certain Strombergs, you could adjust the jet through here. So there is a small little O-ring in there. See if I can get that out. There we go. Put the cap on that. Now we're going to look through our parts and find the correct O-ring. Put that on. There we go. And I use just a little bit sort of, light bit of lubricant right there. There we go. That should be gas tight now. And this should be evaporated also. This goes on there. So I'm going to tighten those screws down, and we'll flip it over, and we'll probably start with the valve over here. All right, that's in place. I'm going to put this temperature compensator on. New seal on it. We'll slide that into place. And I have new covers for them as well, but they're in a box inside, so I'm going to get those for both carbs later and put those on, but that's just a little plastic cover. All right, there we go. Now we have this fun little, that's the wrong piece. We have this fun little thing to put together, the diaphragm and all of that. So try to remember which way it goes. There we go. So there is this little adjustment screw, which is then capped off, so I haven't moved it, so the adjustment should be the same. Got that little O-ring off there. This was not in the gasket set. I bought that separately, but that's just because the diaphragm was completely broken on this thing when I took it out. That goes like that. There's a little spring in there, and then two identical gaskets. Wait, that one on like that, or it's probably easier to actually do on this one. Lay the gasket on. This little diaphragm goes like so. And then when I looked at the other one, there were 3 layers on this old piece. So it seems like this is the right way. Okay. these screws. And I found that these are very easy to cross thread, so just do a couple at a time, a couple turns, and then get it down because it has that spring in there. It's just quite easy to get it wrong. Okay, and then this goes like so. So for that, we do need a gasket. I'll dig through our pile. Various gaskets. I think it's this one. There we go. So that's really the fun part of all of this, trying to get all the gaskets correct. And this is why you do one at a time. When I was rebuilding the other one off camera, I had this one and I took several things apart like this just to see which order all the gaskets go in. I mean, I do have a manual with an exploded view diagram, but it's still it's nice to compare with another one. So that's this side of the car pretty much done except the cover. Now we're moving on to the choke, and I'm not going to put all of it together now because we still need to fix the part with JB Weld, but this is the main part, and I just lubricated it up. Still going to put some other lubricant in here. I just haven't really decided what I'm going to use yet, but it goes that way. And I've really cleaned the surfaces here because my guess is, I mean, there's fuel going through here. And the old gasket was more rubbery than this one. So, once again, trying to figure out. You're going to get confused. So this is the old gasket. That one matches it perfectly. You see this one's thicker. So I'm a little bit worried about fuel leakage and figuring out which way this goes. I had the same issue on the other side. There we go. Things line up. And I'm going to use a little bit of Hydraulic blue. I don't want to block that. I think that is a jet. But just a little bit on here. That was too much, but we'll wipe some of it off just to be 100% sure that this will be fuel tight. I'm not going to over tighten this at all, just don't want to warp anything, and I really hope that this will be fuel tight. Okay, so that is the choke mechanism on there. Still have this whole thing and all of that to do. There's a little O-ring in there, that's this one right there, but we're going to wait for that JB Weld to cure. And now we're going to move on to the piston, which needs a new diaphragm. Even though there's nothing wrong with the old one, I have a new one, so we might as well. There's this little ring in there, and then the diaphragm just pulls off. And that's the interesting thing. They weren't matching diaphragms. Because this one, well, maybe they were. Yeah, I just didn't notice these tabs on the old one yesterday, but that is sort of a foolproof thing, because I was looking in the manual seeing which way the piston goes. It's pretty logical that these holes would be in the same place as on an SU, so it would go this way. But they make it really easy with these little tabs here. So that is how the diaphragm should sit, in that little tab. And let me just tighten all this down, and then I'll show you how that lines up in the main carburetor body. Before we put the piston in, I realized we forgot this little fellow, which is the top of here. So let me see, this goes this way, and just these little screws. There we go. There's that. These little screws in here have been tightened, but I'm just going to double check because I don't want them going into the engine. One thing we haven't talked about is tuning. So if you want to set the mixture on these that have the adjustable needles, you need one of these. It's a Stromberg adjustment tool. It's basically an Allen wrench with this part that can hold the piston in place, because you don't want this piston twisting. It's in there, and then you can, you see, move it like that. And I think you can see right there. And there it is, all the way out, and then all the way in, which all the way in should be all the way rich. They were all set on all the way rich, so I don't know why, but we're going to put them back like that and then tune them. So that also explains the rich running. Now these holes go towards, the engine side. And we're just going to get that little thing in. There we go. And then that little tab there joins in right there. This little thing, that end goes towards you, and I almost forgot the spring. Goes like that, and I'm just gonna put these little screws on, which I just gave a light little polish as well. And there you have it, two Stromberg 175 CD2s rebuilt. And for the first time doing it, doesn't seem that bad. It's a lot when you take it apart compared to an SU. It's a little overly complicated, but once you figure it out, it's not too bad. I went really slow with this one, and that took maybe an hour and a half to put together, just because I was double checking everything. And this one, I don't know how long it took right now, but I mean, I was filming the whole time, and I felt like it went very quickly. And yeah, the chokes are left to do or adjust. There are several different adjustments in here with feeler gauges to set basically the fast idle and all of that. I'm going to just go through that adjustment procedure and do that. And well, I mean, it's basically this figure right here. So I'm going to do that, put it back together. But like I said, there's a little gasket in there. I have checked that these move with heat, so that is really good. But I need to fix the other one like this. And fingers crossed that this little bodge is going to work. While we're building the carbs, I've been busy with other things as well. So when they were soaking ultrasonic cleaners, I wasn't just sitting around, I was doing things on the engine. So we have a new heater valve over there, nice and shiny. There was an old one of plastic, not the correct one, and I was afraid it was going to leak. So we just replaced that. All new hoses here in the back, so they are nice. We have new hose there. We got most hoses done over here. I need to do the hose from the water pump down there, and the one up to thermostat housing, and then that one, the main top hose. But otherwise, all of that is done. Air pump is removed. EGR is removed. I'm going to make some blanking plates for that. And this thing over here was a lot of fun, because remember the bolt snapped, and I just felt it happening and I couldn't do anything about it. It was stuck, as a long bolt here was stuck in this part of the housing, and you can't really do anything about that when that happens. But I was able to cut it, and then I cut a little slit in it with a Dremel very carefully, and I threaded it out. Clean up the threads. I have a new bolt, so we can put all of that back together again. And there's been some progress made in the boot as well. The old leaky pumps have been removed. So you see it's all empty here. It's been cleaned out, vacuumed out, and everything. So I have new pumps ready to go in, new hoses and all of that. So that will be working, and we'll make sure that both tanks work on the car as they should. And that's it for this part. Got a lot done. It was mostly rebuilding the carbs. Still need to do the whole choke assembly, but waiting for that JB weld to dry up. Then I'll mount the carbs back on. So next episode should be the exciting one when this thing fires back into life. So we'll have new fuel pumps, new fuel lines, new coolant lines, new coolant, you name it, fresh fuel. Hopefully this thing fires into life. If it does, we'll continue all the things. I'll do a minor tune of it, but then we'll continue service items such as changing the oil, changing the transmission fluid, rear end, you name it. There's a lot left to do. But I think this was a good, productive episode. But next one, I think it's going to be the real fun one. So make sure you're subscribed and you have notifications turned on so you don't miss the next episode. Anyways, if you like this video, please give a thumbs up, share with friends. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. Until next time, I'm Adam. This was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.